The lifeless and frustrating start to the Phillies season continues, and Dave Dombrowski looks to have finally had enough. While it is not the seismic trade some were hoping for, Kody Clemens has officially been sent out of the organization in exchange for cash considerations. Is this a call of bigger things to come, or something directly about Clemens himself? Do you want to talk about what exactly this means for this Phillies team? We did get the news in the late hours of last night. It was initially reported by Ken Rosenthal first, who tweeted that the Twins are acquiring Kody Clemens from the Phillies. We did ultimately get the details in the morning, and shout out to Phillies Tailgate here, that it is in exchange for cash consideration. So really what I think this comes down to, I think this is about Kody Clemens not having a clear fit on this Phillies team. That I do think he unfortunately falls a little bit into that category of the quadruple A type of player, and that he is too good for the minor leagues, but not quite a guy that you can have in your regular rotation or it just part of your team from the whole construct there. And I think the biggest thing working against him was the fact that he's a left-handed bat. When you think about how the Phillies have planned out their lineup, how much they've leaned on the hitting splits and make sure you're staggering things to put yourself in the best position to win, it is tough to find an opportunity for Kody Clemens. I also think this is a clear show of belief in Weston Wilson. And I think one of my bigger takeaways over the past, what we've seen these past few weeks really, is the internal belief on Weston Wilson specifically there. And I kind of think, moving forward, we should be viewing the left field situation as almost a platoon between Max Kepler and Weston Wilson there. Now, to dive into exactly what I mean with this, we did have an awesome article from Destiny Ludardo kind of breaking things down here. And she writes, the timing of Weston Wilson's activation from the injured list wasn't on accident. With left-handed pitcher David Peterson on the mound for the New York Mets on Wednesday, the Phillies wanted the right-handed hitting Wilson to start in left field. They activated him a few days short of the expiration of his rehab clock. Kody Clemens was designated for assignment as the corresponding move. He went 1 for 2 with a base hit and a run scored in his first game back from an oblique injury suffered in spring training. Then was lifted in the sixth inning for pinch hitter Max Kepler when the Mets replaced Peterson with right-handed reliever Hunter Brosman. The Phillies on Wednesday were aggressive in their development of the left-handed bench bats. Edmundo Sosa, who started at second, was replaced by Bryson Stott in the top of the seventh. Cal Stevenson batted for center fielder Johan Rojas in the ninth. With the Phillies offense struggling to get going, Rob Thomson could be more inclined to pursue the matchup advantage at the bottom of the order. Left field is a prime spot. Thomson said before Wednesday's game in New York that Wilson will get at-bats in left field against left-handed pitching, just don't use the words platoon. Quote, I wouldn't call it a platoon, Thomson said when asked about left field. Wilson could spell Stott at second, and Kepler plays left. I haven't been told anything. Whatever they need, I'm ready to go, Wilson said before Wednesday's game. I'm sure this will be communicated at some point, or I'll get a sense of it. I don't really know much at this point. Now, before I dive deeper into that, I do think at times the Phillies do overthink things with the specific right-handed versus left-handers. I understand the principle that you can throw data at me for right-handers versus left-handers, but to me, the root of the decision should be made in putting your best players on the field. I'm very much in favor in the middle of the lineup going Bryce Harper, then Kyle Schwarber as the 3 and 4 hitters. I think that is the most dangerous way to have this Phillies lineup. It does feel like Rob Thomson is coming around to this, and I understand it's a little bit of a different conversation when we're talking about Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber compared to Max Kepler and Weston Wilson here, but my point still stands that if there's a guy with a hot bat at the plate, if there's a guy who's playing good baseball, don't sacrifice that in favor of just a guy on the other side of the batter's box here. Now, to wrap up this article, I do think this was also notable as well. She continues on to write, the Phillies signed Kepler to a 1-year, $10 million deal this offseason to have him be their everyday left fielder with some strings attached. Dave Dombrowski at the time recognized that left-handed hitting Kepler had better numbers against lefties than righties in 2024, but over his career, he has typically hit better against righties. They also like Wilson against left-handed pitching. Even before Wilson's activation, the Phillies have treated Kepler as a platoon bat. He has not been in the starting lineup the last 4 times the Phillies have faced a left-handed starting pitcher. His 4 for 20 with 7 strikeouts against lefties is too small of a sample size to make a fair conclusion, but the Phillies, with the lineup struggling as a unit, can't afford to give him any more leeway if better options against lefties exist. The Cubs have 3 right-handed starters lined up to face the Phillies over the weekend, so Kepler could start all 3 games in left field. He's off to an uneven start at the plate after going 5 for 34 from April 2nd to April 12th. Kepler is batting .303 with an .803 OPS since the start of the Giants series. His season is far from mirrors on the on-base, no slug trend throughout the Phillies lineup. Kepler's walk rate, 11.2%, is back to resembling his career norm after falling to 5.5% in 2024. But the power isn't quite there yet. He has 1 home run and 4 RBIs. A platoon that nobody wants to call platoon in left field may be the best solution moving forward for the Phillies. Wilson has hit well in his multiple brief stints with the club, but his extended big league opportunity has been hard to come by for the 30-year-old. The front office's preference is to retain the 2023 trade deadline acquisition. Rodolfo Castro's last option last year pulled him off the major league roster 2 years ago. He finally got a chance to make an impression last July when the Phillies released the struggling Whit Merrifield in favor of getting Wilson some more looks. The trade for Austin Hayes weeks later ate into his playing time. Now, a lot to digest here. The biggest takeaway from that entire paragraph, I do think the Phillies were a little bit misleading in their belief in Max Kepler because their actions are not aligned to the words that they very clearly expressed leading into the season. By every indication, every slant for what Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thomson said was that Max Kepler would be the everyday left fielder. I don't think that is how things are playing out, and I do wonder if that has more to do with Kepler specifically. I honestly think it probably has more to do with the lineup as a whole. When you're having struggles from your main guys, the Nick Castellanos, the Trey Turners, the Bryce Harpers even, the Alec Boehm, who I know he's got the hit streak, but the power numbers are just so brutal, man, that when those guys are not doing their job to the fullest extent, it makes the weaknesses of the other positions more notable here. That it's one thing when a guy like Johan Rojas isn't a huge threat, although Rojas has sneaky been roping the ball lately, so shout out to him. But when that is just kind of a weak spot in your lineup, it isn't as visible when you do have those big names doing big name things. When they are struggling, as is currently the case, you do see it on fuller extent that there are not these dangerous layers to a lineup overall. Now, as far as Weston Wilson specifically, I kind of like that the organization is actually showing a belief in him. For a while now, it sort of felt like he's just been this in the gaps guy. Maybe we get a chance here. We'll see if we can give him an opportunity here. It feels like there's an internal push to let's see if this guy can carve out a real role on this team. And I do think he's earned that to an extent. This guy has played good baseball just about every time he's gotten an opportunity. I think it very much works in his favor that he's a right-handed bat. And I do think it's also very favorable for this Phillies team that you can plug and play him in multiple positions, that he can play a little infield. We've seen him play some third base. He can play at second base if the opportunity arises there. Left field, obviously, was probably where we're going to see him the most. So that's a nice little weapon, a nice tool to have in the arsenal for this team, but there are bigger issues at hand overall. Now, the moves may not fully be done with this Phillies team. I do expect this roster to continue to be a work in progress. And I don't think this is necessarily for this season, but we did get an interesting report saying that the Phillies are showing interest in a right-handed pitcher. I'm going to struggle with the name here. I'm not, a 24-year-old starting pitcher in the Chinese Professional Baseball League. Again, I'm not going to act like I've watched a ton of this guy's tape, but I did watch the highlights of him. A pretty unique windup. He's kind of got like a hesitation at the top, and the stuff does look pretty nasty. And what is really notable to me, first off, the second line saying, according to Yahoo Sports, Dave Dombrowski and other members of the front office plan to visit Taiwan to see him pitch. That is obviously a strong sense of belief, and I do think not only is that market something the Phillies have desperately been trying to get into, and by the way, the minor league pitcher, the relief pitcher that they brought in this offseason is looking pretty solid in the minors. So I wouldn't mind giving him a call up, particularly in how the Phillies bullpen has looked as a whole there. But I also think it is important to note that this is continued journey to improve this roster. It does feel like Dave Dombrowski is checking all the boxes at the bottom of that to-do list here, which I do think is important moving forward. And the one other note I did want to put ahead of this Cubs series really taking off, and obviously Taijuan Walker kicking things off yesterday. Taijuan battled, man, but this team, it's the bats are not waking up. That is the issue with this Phillies team front and center. The guys that need to hit are not hitting here. But one note that I did want to add, I had not seen this reported anywhere before, but Luzardo, according to Ken Rosenthal, that the Cubs had an offseason trade in place for Jesus Luzardo, but backed out due to medical concerns. And obviously he will start for the Phillies today. Kind of interesting note there. And we heard a lot with the Jeff Hoffman situation, who not only did the Phillies seemingly have their concerns there, but the Braves and the Orioles both backing out of a deal there. Kind of interesting that was attached to Luzardo. That was personally the first time that I'd seen that report there, so I thought that was worth throwing in there. But to Kody Clemens, shout out to you. Hope the pastures are greener on the other side. He will be a guy that I'll be continuing to root for regardless of what uniform he is. And a little trivia to wrap up with him. Always remember, if you get some bar trivia here coming, that the father-son duo with the most strikeouts in MLB history, that would be Roger and Kody Clemens right there. So shout out to him. Do hope there are better days in his career, and certainly hope there are better days ahead for this Phillies franchise, because it has been an absolutely brutal stretch lately. I do hope this is a pivotal moment at the season. We are hitting the low point point early, and things can cruise from here. But ultimately, they got a lot of work to put in, far beyond just moving on from Kody Clemens. But appreciate you guys for rocking with us here on Phillies Digest. If you have not already, make sure you are smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video here, and dropping your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be back talking with you next time. Peace.